Hey guys, it's Kay Journey, and I am back today actually to start a new series on my channel. Um, so with everything that's been going on in the world, I think we could all just use some calm time, some relaxed time. And I also really just wanted to share my last November writing challenge. So last year I did 100K in Q4 with Kate Kavanaugh, and I also was in the rough draft challenge with Sarah Cannon. And when I was doing that, I actually was writing a book I called the Book Club book. Um, this is that book. It turned into Books and Ghosts and Pixies on Toast. And for this year, for this rough draft challenge, I'm going to be doing the third book in this series. But I also wanted to kind of start sharing my writing more. So to get started, I have two caveats for this. Number one, there's a character in here named Calliope. Here in the United States, that would be pronounced Calliope, but she's not from the United States. She's from Greece. So we're pronouncing it the way that she would, because that's how they pronounced it where she was born. So she is Calliope. And then I have another character in here whose name is Arel. And I'm mispronouncing that, and I know I'm mispronouncing it. And I that's why I haven't done one of the reasons why I have not done the audiobook yet is because every time I say his name, it sounds like I'm saying it around a lollipop. I'm stumbling over it, and it's because I've listened to and Googled several different translations, and now they're all muddled in my head. So I just need to like take a few days and practice it. But I kind of wanted to jump into this, so I'm just preemptively apologizing for how I say his name, and it might be that I end up having to get a voice actor to do the reading because of how badly I say his name. My mouth just doesn't want to make the sound. So anyway, I am super excited to share this with you guys, and if you enjoy it, I'm going to be doing at least the first 3 chapters, and if people are enjoying it, then I will keep going. And I'm going to be doing it on Wednesdays. I'm calling them Witchy Wednesdays, and yeah, I'm super excited. I think this is the next stage of where I want to take my channel. So if you are interested, please stay, hang out, and listen and watch me crochet gloves for myself. Chapter 1, September 5th. Vlada. The Pixies were rampaging in the autumn leaves again. They looked like ethereal, miniature humans with long flowing red and brown hair and shimmering translucent wings. They were lovely, if one could see them. But they were jealous of the riot of orange, yellow, red, and dusky purple leaves in the maple, ash, and red alder trees in her backyard. So jealous, in fact, that they were trying to pull the leaves down early. They might have been cute to Vlada if she weren't a witch and aware that they were nasty little pests. She hadn't considered them when she put up the protection spell around her house, and she deeply regretted that they were allowed access. One of them saw her watching and flipped her off. She returned the gesture and threw more food to the murder of crows that had gathered in her backyard, bobbing and hopping at her feet, waiting for treats. She smiled down at them. "How's tricks, my friends?" she said, as she tossed them shredded cold chicken and some apple chunks. Even here, across the world, the crows and ravens had wisdom they would share, for a price. They didn't deign to answer her question, just ate what she offered and hopped about merrily. She didn't expect an answer, but it was polite to ask anyway. They hunted the Pixies. Their battle had been raging since before Vlada moved here. All she did was pick a side. As soon as she returned inside, they would go back to pixie chasing, forcing the winged pests to stay in their nest at the back edge of Vlada's property. American pixies were such grumpy little bugs, but they were no match for the wise black birds. When she ran out of food, she brushed her hands on her jeans, her thick thighs jiggling inside the tight fabric, and thanked the birds before heading back into the warmth of her kitchen. The kitchen wasn't large, but she lived by herself with her 4-footed companions Mai, so she didn't need anything larger. They lived quietly, surrounded by books, and she was happier than she'd ever been. Her bookstore, with her house attached to the back of it, was perfect. The house and shop combo had an upper story where her bedroom, spell room, and guest room were, a ground-level kitchen that connected to the main story area, and a basement for storage and her weekly book club meetings. The kettle was popping and bubbling, just about to hiss, when she pulled it off of the heat and poured the hot water into her mug with a bag of Earl Grey tea. The bergamot smell rose with the steam, and she inhaled happily and then grinned even more as she looked outside and saw the Pixies running for their lives. Years ago, in Russia, her mother would always remind her, "Feed the crows. Do it in secret so no one knows what you are, but do it anyway. Because the crows, they are smart, and they look out for their own. Make yourself one of theirs, and the world will be a much safer place for you. Anger them at your peril." When she moved here to the backwoods town of Spruce Falls, Washington, right next to the small city of Everson, the first thing she'd done, before even unpacking Zmai's books, was to introduce herself to the solitary crow on her back porch. She knew one would be waiting for her, because she always found them, and they always found her. They were family, even if they spoke another language and came from many miles away. She sipped her tea, contentedly gazing out the window at the battle between the crows and pixies. A few pixies tumbled to the ground, but at least the leaves were being left alone. The crows would herd the pixies back to their nest, their grumbling protests muffled by the tangled net of blackberry bushes that crept into the northern corner of her yard. She turned away with a satisfied smile. She needed to get the book club room ready. They were having their weekly meeting today, and it was the best part of her week. Zmai. Zmai opened his eyes grudgingly. Why must Vlada's fussing always interrupt his naps? As if the other two-legged creatures coming to visit didn't slough off enough dust and hair, but must somehow step into a clean, living creature-free room. She even vacuumed his hair out of the couch, glaring at him with her dark brown eyes, her face scrunched in that funny way that said she wasn't really irritated. He yawned at her and stretched his forepaws. His claws extended into the rug of his perch, tugging at it with a satisfying ripping sound, and giving just enough resistance to really make the stretch feel fabulous in his joints. "Must you make that racket?" he grumbled to her telepathically. "I must, Your Highness. If you didn't shed so much hair, I might not have to do this every week." She pointed to the pile of blue-black hair that had accumulated in the clear chamber of the vacuum. There were hardly any of her own dark curling strands mixed into the mess. "You're so loud." "Nap upstairs, then," she said aloud, and resumed her torment of his ears. He narrowed his eyes at her and huffed, and then jumped down from the top of his carpeted tower, landing lightly on his paws. He flicked the tip of his tail at her to show his annoyance, but she ignored him. Fine, then. If she was going to be loud while he was napping, he might as well go upstairs and start reading that new romantasy he'd been gifted. Human love was interesting and complex and had puzzled him for ages. He also liked this one because it had dragons. Not real dragons, obviously, but they were well done for having been written by a creature that hadn't ever really met one. He eyed the stairs with resigned annoyance and bounded up them. He was going to have to climb much higher to get to his reading nook, which was a padded dog bed on top of 2 shelves set back to back, piled with open books that Vlada changed out every time he asked. His sanctuary had to be set up where the human book thieves wouldn't see him. Vlada called them customers and said that they helped fund his new books and the roof over their heads, but they still irritated him. These were his books, collected over decades, and he hated to part with them. Books were fascinating, and they smelled like all the places where the paper came from and how the ink was made, and told a story of their creation before he ever even had to open them. Inside, they gave him a glimpse into what beautiful nonsense humans were coming up with now. He much preferred Tolkien to, say, Dickens, but they were both fabulous minds. Minds that had been preserved in ink on paper and were available to him whenever he wished, as long as Vlada didn't sell them before he could stop her. Customers, he thought sarcastically. Thieves trading in paper not worth the ink on it. Their fake money doesn't even have a good story to tell. It's mostly lies and propaganda anyway. Still, Vlada was happy here, and he was getting new books almost as fast as she was selling them, so he didn't mind. This latest book was given to him by Aurel, and smelled of the clumsy Dampier. Poor man, he was never going to find a mate if he didn't stand up straighter and begin thinking more like a cat. Or like a dragon. Vlada. Zara had brought croissants and cookies. The warm smell of them complemented the smell of Vlada's tea and Aurel's coffee, making the whole room smell lovely, even if it was in the basement. Everyone had brought their copies of the book they were supposed to be discussing, and even Zmai had decided to join,
but no one was discussing the book. I heard the chief was actually crying while burying his dog, Calliope said sadly. She was a dryad, who had packed up her olive tree and left Europe, landing first in Pennsylvania and then moving further west as time got on. Her tree was getting harder and harder to move, and soon, she knew, she must either return to Europe and her family there, or settle down somewhere here and let her roots finally find a home. She had long, dark, wavy hair, deep green eyes, and a high-pitched, girly voice. Strong black men are allowed to cry. Zara raised her eyebrows at Calliope. Her deep ebony skin crinkled around her warm brown eyes as Calliope's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Zara was the town beauty, and Vlada often wondered how she ended up in the kitchen of a backwoods bakery instead of on a runway in Italy. That's not what I meant. I know, Zara teased, tossing her dark locks behind her head, making the bones and beads woven into them clack against each other. The scales on the back of her neck, that she didn't need to hide in the safety of Vlada's house, shone like jewels in the light, silver and green and purple against the darkness of her skin. You're adorable when you're flustered. But back to Chief King. If he hadn't been sad about his dog being murdered, I wouldn't have felt safe in this town anymore. I feel bad for Miller's cat, Aurel said quietly. He sat with his legs tucked under him, sunken deep into his hoodie. His lank black hair brushed his chest, and his icy blue eyes glittered beneath the shadows of his hood. Imagine having that bastard as your owner, and then some human comes along and drowns you. The principal's cat was a spoiled princess, but she wasn't killed by a human, or by anything that walked on two legs. Neither was Jace King's dog. Smile licked his paw lazily, and Vlada shared his words with the group. I don't think cats drown on their own, Vlada argued out loud. I smelled all over that house while your Chief King was taking the human statement, and it was not the human who murdered her. If you do not believe my nose, believe your own eyes. If he had killed her, he would have been covered in scratches. Smite twitched his ears at her and continued. There were no other human smells on the body, but it did smell strongly of human waste. When did you go snooping at Principal Miller's house? Vlada asked him privately. I started keeping tabs on him after he began bullying you. His cat wouldn't tell me his weaknesses. Apparently, they were very happy together. I bet the cat was attacked outside of the house, Aurel said. It would explain the lack of evidence. But then how would it have gotten back into the house without some human smell on it? Calliope mused. Maybe the killer had it in a sack and tossed it into the house from the door? Zara guessed. It was not in a sack. I am telling you, it was not killed by a human. If the lot of you are just going to argue in circles, I'm going to go read in my nook. Vlada shook her head as she watched Zmai pad softly from the room. You might want to keep an eye on him, Calliope suggested, pointing to the retreating feline. Oh, he's fine. Zmai can take care of himself, Vlada grimaced, and then pulled out the book they'd been reading. What did you guys think? I thought it was sweet, Calliope smiled, pulling out the book and caressing it fondly. Zara watched Calliope, a soft smile on her face. I thought it was sweet too, if a bit sappy. Aurel pulled out the book. Are you two talking about this contrived drivel? Did we read the same book? It was utter nonsense. Vlada grinned and sat back and sipped her tea as the others began arguing. These moments were her favorite part about their meetings. This was what the story said family was supposed to feel like, and it was the closest she'd ever come to it. Zmai. Zmai heard a soft thud in the front yard, like something light being dropped onto the damp grass, just inside the edge of the property. He tried to ignore it, but something about the sound made the hair on his back stand up. What could possibly be thudding on his lawn? He told himself he was being foolish and tried to return to reading, but he could not. He sighed. He needed to turn the page anyway, which meant he would have to move his paw to flip the page, and if he was going to have to move it all, he might as well jump down and go look out the window. From the inner ledge of the big bay window, which doubled as a seat, Zmai could see almost the entire front yard. The sky was dark, and the only light was scattered patches from the windows, spreading across the lawn, distorting the shapes of the familiar plants and stones. At first, he saw nothing amiss. The yard looked as damp as it was supposed to look in the September rains. Then he noticed a bit of orange on the ground beside the roses. Vlada hadn't cut the flowers down yet, and big burgundy rose hips hung heavy on the shrub in the rain, bobbing with the breeze. Beneath them, something orange lay still. He wanted to tell himself that it was a pile of leaves that somehow migrated from the backyard to the front. He wanted to tell himself to go back to his perch and his book and ignore the sound and that mysterious orange something. With an even heavier sigh and a frustrated few flicks of his tail, he padded to the back door and out the cat door Vlada had installed for him. The yard was wet as ever, and he didn't like the dampness on his paws, but he crept through the grass anyway. He scowled. He would have to waste time drying out before he could turn the page in his book again. Irritation was building in his chest. Whoever had lobbed the orange something halfway into his yard had better be ready to defend themselves, because this was beyond the pale. He was around the house and stepping into the front yard when he smelled it. Wet cat hair. Dead wet cat hair. Someone had thrown a dead cat into his yard. Rage overtook him. Was someone sending him a warning? Was this atrocity meant to scare Vlada? Because by tooth and by claw, he was not going to stand for that. No one tormented his human but him. When he approached, he smelled something worse, but fainter. The smell of excrement and dirty water. It smelled eerily like Principal Miller's cat. He glanced around swiftly, looking for any signs of movement. He was not a cat that would be trapped and killed easily. Nothing moved besides the wind. It whistled down the street, through bushes and trees, but told him nothing else. He shivered, as if the cold was a portent of things to come, and continued forward again. As he got closer to the body, he recognized the cat. It was the emaciated orange tabby with notched ears that lived in the trailer park 5 blocks to the northeast. The tabby was not well taken care of by his owner, who often smelled of chemicals and smoke. Now he was out of his misery, without a mark on him. This cat had been drowned too, just like the high school principal's cat and the police chief's dog. Instead of being left in his yard like the others, he had been tossed here. Someone was trying to send them a message, a dark and sinister one. Empty blue eyes stared out across the lawn, and Zmai sniffed at him carefully before looking for footsteps, or anything, to show where the murderer had gone. There was nothing, not even a bent blade of grass, to show who or what had thrown this poor feline into his yard. Zmai yowled and headed back to the house. Vlada was still with her book club, but he was going to have to interrupt them. She would be upset, and he would have to let her scratch his belly for a long time tonight to calm her. Whoever was targeting them obviously didn't know who they were messing with, because, if they did, they never would have come close to this house. Vlada. Calliope and Arl reluctantly left Vlada's house after Police Chief King got their statements, but Vlada reassured them that she would be fine. Arel was short with the police chief, and Vlada figured it was because his youngest and favorite brother, Mihai, was caught a week ago tagging the gymnasium at the high school. He was caught with a couple of troubled kids, and his family was now paying restitution, while the other kids got community service. Arel felt that his family was targeted for their money, and he resented the chief, in particular, for not standing up for Mihai. While the others left, Zara, on the other hand, was already sleeping in the guest room upstairs. She had to be up early, and she was not about to leave Vlada alone, no matter how many times Vlada assured her that Zmai was all the protection she needed. A snoring Zara was about as useful for keeping away creeps as a loaded banana. Having Chief King in her kitchen was another story, though. He was taking thorough notes and asked her repeated questions, as if Zmai had found a murdered human in her yard instead of a cat. And she understood why. "How are you doing?" she asked, leaning against the counter with a hot cup of tea in her hands. "I'm fine," he mumbled, shuffling papers and looking anything but fine. Vlada nodded and turned and poured him a cup of coffee. Arel hadn't drunk the whole pot. "Do you take creamer?" King grunted. "No, but don't worry about it. I shouldn't take up much more of your time. There's nothing here that tells me anything more than what I already knew." Vlada set the cup next to him anyway, and he leaned back and sighed, closing his eyes for a second. "I'm really sorry about your dog," she said softly, her voice thick in her throat. King nodded and sat up. He straightened the papers and put them back in the folder. Is there anything else you can tell me about what happened tonight? Any reason that they would target you? I have absolutely no idea, Vlada said truthfully. He nodded and picked up the cup and sipped. Thank you. You're welcome. Is there anything I can do? King shook his head. His dark eyes were so sad when he met her gaze. I don't know who is doing this or why, but I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to make sure they pay for killing my Jackson. I hope you do. He took another sip and seemed to straighten just a bit. You've been very kind, and I appreciate the coffee. I'm going to go home now and try not to think anymore. If you think of anything, just call me. If you don't feel safe for any reason, I can set you up with a bed and breakfast in Everson under my name until this is over. The cat's chip says it belongs to a guy named Ronald Sheets. He's not the type you want to cross. I'm sure that won't be necessary, but thank you. I'm going to send over my new deputy tomorrow to look around in the daylight. Let me know what you think of him. He's from out of town. When did he move to town? A couple of weeks ago. Vlada nodded. I have to ask about Rarl's brother's case. Why didn't the other kids have to pay restitution? The chief scowled. They're still sore about that? The other kids are dirt poor. They couldn't pay. The judge made that call, not me, but I fully support it. Vlada sighed and nodded too. Okay, well, I open at 9. After he was gone, Vlada cleaned up the coffee and went upstairs. As she expected, Zmai was in her bed, waiting for her. It was their unspoken contract. When she was upset, he volunteered for belly rubs, and he might not even complain about it. She settled into the bed a few moments later and struggled to find sleep. Who would want to scare her and hurt the chief? Targeting Principal Miller she could almost understand. The man was a major bigot and a control freak. But why were the animals killed instead of their humans? And why kill the cat of some man named Ronald Sheets, who she'd never even met before, and leave it in her yard? September 6th. Vlada. The sun rose, and her morning tea was steeping when she unlocked the shop doors and locked eyes with a man on her front step. He must have been the new deputy, because he was wearing a badge and a gun, but she was so taken with his eyes that he could have been wearing a blow-up dinosaur outfit, and she might not have noticed. He had thick black hair and medium golden brown skin. He wasn't much taller than her, but his eyes were a startling shade of green, almost glowing. They flashed as the reflection of the morning light rebounded off of her door and crossed his face. She gestured him into the room, tongue-tied. He's not human, Zmai said, leaping down from his reading nook and stalking toward them. What are you? Vlada forced herself to ask. Between his eyes and Zmai, she wasn't about to beat around the bush, and she didn't have the grace to be as suave as Zara was. He blinked a few times. My name is Leon Tovar. I'm a Mexican-American, and I'm the new deputy? That seems like a really weird way to greet someone when you first met them. Yes, I know you are the deputy, but you most certainly are not just a human. Vlada continued to plow ahead, almost as if, now that her mouth was working, she couldn't control it anymore. Leon blinked, and then a slow smile spread across his face. What are you? I asked you first. His smile faded a bit, but he took a deep breath, his big chest straining the buttons on his shirt a bit. My mother was a bruja, and my father was a one-night stand gone horribly wrong. She was not prepared for a were-jaguar son, but she made the most of it, I suppose. Were-jaguar and brujo. No wonder he smells like a predator. Smile circled Vlada's legs and hissed at Leon. What's his problem? Leon asked, looking down at Zmai. He says you smell like a predator, Vlada answered blandly, trying not to be intimidated. Leon blinked. You can talk to your cat? Vlada nodded but didn't elaborate. He's my companion, and I trust his instincts. Leon laughed and then spoke down to Zmai. If you think I'm a predator, you should meet my mom. She's something else. I'm here as a police officer. I don't want to hurt anyone. Do you swear it? Vlada asked softly. Leon stared directly into her eyes. Unless there is a reason for me to have to protect myself, or someone else, from you, I am no threat to you. I swear it. Vlada shook herself, feeling the power of those eyes up and down her spine. In that case, would you like some tea? I have coffee too. Leon grinned. I'm not sure I'm allowed to stay for coffee, but I do need to look around the yard and the house, in case there's something that you or King missed in the dark. Vlada nodded, flipped the open sign on the door around again, and relocked the door. My living area is in the back. You can start there. As they were heading toward the back wall and the door that led to her private residence, Leon stopped and stared at the painting that hung on the wall behind the till. You host a book club? He asked. Vlada felt herself nodding mutely. The book club was specifically for the local magical community, and therefore the sign was magical. If a human looked at the sign, they would see a pretty purple design that made no sense. When someone of magical blood looked at it, it was an advertisement for the book club, including dates and times and the latest book they were reading. I take it there are more like us around here, he questioned as the silence stretched between them. There are, she forced herself to say. Her voice sounded high and stressed, and she coughed. We meet every Friday. Can I come? He gave her another grin, and she couldn't help but grin back. Do you like books? I do. And it's nice knowing there are others here. I grew up in Las Cruces, New Mexico. There were a lot of people like us there, but I wasn't expecting to find a community out here. There aren't many, but we're not alone. It's an open meeting, so you're welcome to come, but if you don't mesh well with the other members, we may have to create a second club. One with just you and me. Every hair on her body stood at attention. His gaze flicked down to her mouth and then back to her eyes, and she just shook her head and turned away. The kitchen is this way. Leon followed her, carefully avoiding stepping anywhere near Zmai, who periodically flicked his tail in annoyance. Vlada took a deep breath as they stepped from the store into her kitchen, trying to calm her racing heart. Something about him made her nerves stand on end. And that's it. That is chapter 1. That's where it stops. And I will be jumping into chapter 2 next week. Let me know if you enjoyed this. Let me know if you enjoy the visuals. I plan on, that's me recording this. I'm doing it in the bathroom. But the visual that you guys are going to see is of me crocheting some gloves for myself. So let me know if you like that, or if you want me to be watching something else, or you want to be watching me read it. I have no idea how I would pull that off, because my studio is right next to the wall. That's right next to the busy door, or the busy window, but the busy road. I can talk. Anyway, yeah, let me know if you guys enjoyed this. I will be back next week with another one of these, and also with a planning video, and I think I have another video planned. I'm not sure. Don't quote me, but very definitely I will be back next week with another planning video and another reading of the chapter for chapter 2. Yeah, please like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.